Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Our guest today is Bridger Ammar. Bridger, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Bridger, we're going to start off this conversation a little different than most ones. First off, I want to talk about Burning Man.
All right, let's
Yeah,
do it.
so I'm like a big fan of Burning Man. I haven't been yet. Um, and you just went last year, correct?
Yeah, last year was my first time.
So, how was that experience like? Because you always share like stories of water craziness, the wild crazy nights, all the
Well,
art that's just like, can you just like talk about it a little bit?
let me start by saying that most people who haven't been to Burning Man don't actually know what Burning Man is about. And part of it is there are certain things that get hyped a lot, and they're not necessarily what people go to Burning Man for. Um, in my recollection, the most profound thing about being in Burning Man is to actually have this experience of you can be who you are with no judgment, because this is kind of like the spirit of Burning Man. And because it's such a unique place where people come from all over the world to like participate in this like week long or a couple weeks long city of over 70,000 people who are just there for a week, and then they remove everything that they bring with them, trying to make the place as sustainable as possible. It's just an experiment. I think it's a human experiment that I don't know any parallel to. And with that experiment, everybody brings their own hypothesis. How can I live here without money, without relying on a lot of other people? You are relying on other people, but you come as prepared as you can so that you can be self-reliant. You can be basically contributing to society in a way that is not monetary. So some people, for example, serve food, some serve drinks, some just like be like run a concert or a DJ, some create art. And the idea of it is like, how can we function as a society and help one another and actually have a great time without, without all the troubles that we bring from our real world.
It's around 60,000 people that go there, right? And
Maybe I,
it's a big number,
it's a lot of
like a
people.
small town.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
all do it like they build it and shut it down like 7 days, which is incredible. And you think like they can do this in 7 days. Why does it take so long for other people to do other things, you know? Like, yeah. Of course everyone's like in the same attitude, I think, same mentality, right? They want to share, collaborate, you know. And so that probably plays a part in it too. So my thing, like I want to go to my bucket list, but like I was in the US Army. I spent a lot of time in the deserts. So desert is fun to actually like equal to me, right? So how much does desert life play into it, right?
I mean, everybody goes there for a reason, and everybody have different temperaments. So some people like to go in the desert every day. Some people just hang in their camp every day, all day. And it's really a place where you can be yourself in the sense that nobody's judging you. Just like be safe, keep other people around you safe. And some people really take their job very seriously. So, for example, one of the camps is essentially a hospital or a place where people can go and have a good time because, recover from, the challenges that they were experiencing. Another one that I was part of is called the baggage check, where actually you are basically leaving your baggage here, and you're leaving the place a little bit lighter than you came.
Yeah.
It's so specifically regarding the desert question, at night it's actually pretty nice, kind of
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
So you
People
have to
don't
be
realize the desert gets cold at nighttime.
right.
So you going from like 100 degrees, even going from 100 like 70 degrees, at 70 degrees feel like it's freezing.
Yes, and that's one of the things that like a lot of people discover for the first time when they go to Burning Man, and it's kind of like a new experience for a lot of people. And I think everybody who I met for the first time there was having such a moment, a transformational moment in their life.
Did you go by yourself? You were like with a group of people.
I was invited by a wonderful friend who I've known her for years, and further invited another friend I knew also for a long time. So I wasn't alone in that experience. I had a number of people who I could count on.
It's like be crazy to go there by yourself though. Like that'd be like insane to go there by yourself.
There's definitely like a section in Burning Man where people are not part of a camp, so you're going by yourself exactly, and it's
I mean,
it's
do they like drive there and set up a tent outside by themselves, or man, that's
yeah,
like no
all
one
of them.
around. Like man, that's I don't know about that one.
It's definitely badass. It's super badass.
And so I read that there in Burning Man, there's a daytime Burning Man and nighttime Burning Man, like two different camps. Which camp were you mean like nighttime Burning Man or daytime Burning Man or kind of a combination?
You know,
'Cause I heard each experience is kind of different.
the lines between days really blurred for
Mm.
me because you don't have internet, you don't have work, you don't have phones. You do what's in the moment, but everybody's for me it was what is in front of me right now
Yeah.
is what's interesting to do right now is what I'm gonna do. So I definitely slept part of the time, part of the day and part of the night.
Uh-huh.
So I would say I got a flavor of both experiences.
So it's like Burning Man, there's so much stuff going on, right? 24/7, you know, there's art things, concerts. Like, how do you like pick and choose what to go to? Because obviously you can't do everything. There's no way. Like, how do you decide what you wanted to take part in?
You definitely are part of the community, right? So you hear people talking about it's not much different than here. When you like a friend of you went to this concert and they told you about it, so you might want to go to the next one, and this one happens just tomorrow. And so that's part of it. Another part of it is just like going to explore. Some of my favorite memories are just me and a friend just going with no target, like with no clear destination. Just let's scout. And we found an interesting place that has music, and so we danced a bit, and then
Mhm.
we walked off, and we found crazy people
Yeah.
and doing all sorts of interesting things.
And the stuff the builders is mind blowing. The engineering they have in there, like this, man, you built this in like a day, like, good Lord, this is incredible.
Yeah, and part of it is this is how they pay to the community. So a lot of people who come early are able to get basically
Discounted tickets,
right,
whatever.
and because
Because it's not cheap to go there, right? It's
it is
like,
not.
yeah, it
Yeah.
costs a little bit of money, yeah.
So originally it was the intention for it was to be, a very inclusive space for everybody. But to be fair, like not everybody can afford to
Yeah.
pay a few hundred
First of all,
dollars.
no, everyone can afford to take a week off from their work, right? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah. So I know if you go to Burning Man, you have to like you can't charge for anything. You have to offer something for free, right? You have to give some kind of community service, like give free drinks, whatever. What it was that you offered while you were there?
I'm gonna answer this question after this podcast.
Okay, okay. No worries, no worries. Okay. Um, and so you went to Burning Man the first time this year or last year. What was some like misconceptions you had about it that were not true?
Yeah, absolutely. There was the misconception that if you're there, you're always gonna be like, I don't know, like doing drugs.
Yeah. That's gonna make my follow question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, you get a choice.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a choice, and a lot of people there choose not to
Mhm.
use drugs, and they're not like looked down upon in any
Yeah.
way. At the same time, it is also, a place where you can
Yeah.
use
I mean,
drugs.
can look at some of the videos all the night, you're like, man, yeah, they're on psychedelics. They're doing something right because this, yeah. So I'm sure it's there. Do you plan on going back again, or is it like a one-time deal for you?
I'm definitely going back
Yeah.
because it's a way for us to disconnect from the busy life and basically like slow down
Mm.
the pace of your existence.
So the people you met there, I'm sure you met a lot of people. Were you able to like follow up with them later on after Burning Man to keep in touch with them, or you just Burning Man is Burning Man, and after that, is no more contact with those people?
I definitely had really strong friendships,
Mm.
formed strong friendships there, and I continue to talk to them occasionally, not every day, obviously,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
everybody's busy. But yeah, some people are really wonderful there, and yeah, I'm honored to have met them.
I always heard the line to get in Burning Man is insane though. Like when it's time to leave, it's time to go. Then I hear the line is like 10 miles long. It's like a pain. Is that
Oh yeah, the line was painful, but
because there's only one road in, one road out, right?
yeah, I mean, with music, with like a few audiobooks,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to pass the time. Honestly, I also enjoy driving. I did a couple times road like cross country road trip.
Mm.
To me, just spending time on the road with my audiobook, with my thoughts, is pretty good time.
Yeah. I'm guessing your friends told you what to pack, all that kind of stuff. Give your packing list, like bring this, don't bring that.
It's actually intense.
Yeah.
I would say I wasn't.
Because you live in the desert for 7 days. I mean, you gotta have goggles, you gotta protect yourself, you gotta, make sure you have clean water. It's the thing too where like you said, like you can't leave anything behind. So if you use like water to cook, the water's dirty, you just can't pour it in the ground. You gotta dispose it some kind of way. It's all environmental and stuff.
Yeah, it's just a long list of like disclaimers to avoid ruining the environment, and most people take it seriously. And there's like a little bit of like community taking care of each other. So if somebody is making a mistake for the first time, and or they generally don't know, the people are like coaching them into doing the right thing. It's a very healthy community in that way,
Yeah.
I'd say.
So it's 30,000, one of them is 60,000. Regardless, everyone has the same mindset. With that number of people, there's going to be at least one or two bad apples, right? Or they're like, I don't know, like, do they like form a police force, or the U.S. government comes and has like security guards? How does that work in case people do bad things? Or everyone just self polices everyone?
Right. I mean, bad things happen, right? And sometimes, especially when people are not super, like in their mind, like
Yeah,
sober, they sometimes make mistakes, and that it does happen. And it's about having a healthy community where people, more people are trying to take care of each other.
yeah,
And I didn't encounter or like observe anything that's
yeah,
like egregious.
hmm
But there was like a few incidents where,
yeah.
like the sort of thing that you see
People
in a bar
disagree.
here.
Yeah, like, yeah, something small like, hey, don't talk to my girlfriend or something like that, or I'm dancing this space. I mean, yeah, something can quickly get out of hand, right?
Everything that I've seen was pretty minor.
Yeah,
Like nothing that you wouldn't experience here in
yeah,
a regular,
yeah.
conversation on the
Overall, you had a
street.
great experience.
Overall, it was a great
Yeah,
experience. Absolutely, yes.
yeah, it's on my bucket list. Yeah, cool. All right, so moving on, let's talk about scientific progress, right? And so, um, you might know this, you might know that, but I recently learned, like, I think in year 1895, the guy who ran the U.S. Patent Office wanted to close down the patent office. He said everything's already been invented, right? Thank God he didn't close it down, right? And can you just talk about the state of scientific progress today, right? Like, are we advancing enough? It's like, for example, like I told someone earlier today, like people don't realize, like we went from Pong to AI, that's the 50 years, right? That's the amount of investment going on right now. It's just insane, right? But I'm pretty sure back in the Roman era times or Egyptian times, during the pharaohs, they said the same thing, right? Oh, scientific progress is advancing so much, right? So are we really advancing that much as we think we are?
I would say yes, because honestly, it's all about communication. So like there is a big moment in the history where printing was invented, and that's when you were able to distribute something that somebody thinks is important to a lot of people. And many transformations in the history of media has enabled vast expansion of ideas or distribution of ideas. So when it comes to scientific progress, it comes from science communication, and it's a critical piece because not enough people think about the modern economy and how we live is extremely driven by science and technology. Like gone are the days when your primary money is being made by farming, and like yeah, even farming now is heavily using biotechnology in order to reduce the diseases and increase the yield of your products and crops. So it's become such an important critical superpower, I would say, to have a strong science economy and the ability to like it's really a huge funnel, right? To first understand the science and then come up with new solutions to the outstanding problems. And then from those solutions, validate them to make sure they are safe, they are efficient, effective. From that, then you build actually scalable solutions. So there's like there's the phase of experimentation, and then there's the phase of actually engineering it and making it production in like putting it in production. So a huge difference between these two phases, and of course one enables the other. And from that, you want to actually create the value, like capture the value. So so far we've created a solution to a real problem, and then we need to actually capture the value. So that's where business development comes in the picture, and eventually the end user benefits from the science that's been produced. But throughout this process, science communication is necessary for this thing to work, because if you build the best solution in the world, the most credible solution in the world based on science and all the data and the verification in the world, but nobody knows about it, it's not going to be adopted. So you're just going to, be happy with your own invention, but nobody else is going to benefit from it. And in my opinion, the progress we've been making, yes, is very vast, but I am a little bit disappointed, to be honest, in the way we have in the this called industrialized world addressed the needs of the global economy or a global society that we are part of, because people tend to solve the problems that are in front of them. And at the end of the day, there are certain environments, certain, let's say, societies who have more capacity to produce for historical reasons and for mostly historical reasons. When you think about how wealth has transferred over, generations, and then the question becomes, how are we going to actually solve the most burning problems on Earth? So that's kind of like a question I'd like us to drill in a little bit on.
Yes. And so, like, from my point of view, if you're a scientist, you got to have the highest ethics, right? Because you can't be a scientist, like, fudging numbers, telling them truths. How does the science community like, kind of like police themselves, make sure like is there like some kind of national scientific ethics board that, oversees everyone? Like, how does that work?
There is a lot, actually, a lot of processes that are in place. I would say the most important one is the intrinsic motivation for a scientist to do good work, because everybody has the potential to cheat. Everybody has the potential to do what's right. And if you're very clever, then you can fudge numbers and basically go under the radar, even though there's a lot of standards and checks and balances. So I would say this is the responsibility of the society as a whole to raise human beings who want to do the right thing. The professors, the teachers who are leading by example, really. I would say this is the most critical piece in terms of like what checks and balances actually exist, because like you said, there's always going to be some bad apples. We have a number of them. Peer reviews is a significant part of it, because historically, when you publish a new finding, in order to get it kind of like to give it the credibility, you want to publish it in a reputable journal or conference. And those have, peer reviewing requirements. So basically, the draft that describes the contribution that you're making in science goes to other people who know a lot about this field. They may not be the world expert in this specific problem, but they are able to judge the degree to which this is original, this is feasible, this is actually valid, reproducible. And that's, it's a judgment call. So not all the reviewers will say the same things, but by complementing, by putting these ideas together and these reviews together, you can actually come up with a pretty good understanding of to what degree this contribution is meaningful or is valid, it can be reproduced. There's a number of other checks and balances. This one in particular, the peer reviews, is losing its value because increasingly people are impatient to publish the results. Right? Part of it is flag planting. So flag planting is this idea that, oh, I came here first, right? I want to demonstrate to the world that I have invented this first, which is, given the incentive structure of in science, that is important. So I can't really blame people who want to do this. At the same time, it kind of like increasingly becomes unnecessary for people to publish in these journals. And those journals and conferences also have their own biases, right? Because we're, for example, trying to solve a problem that is only so relevant for Kenya, to pick like a country in Africa that I care about. Most of the reviewers never heard of Kenya or never cared about the problems in Kenya, and the problems that we're trying to solve there to them are not really interesting. So they may be biased against that contribution. And I've seen this a number of times.
So what is the purpose of science? Is the purpose of science to like, suppose someone's a physics scientist, is the purpose of the physics science to like advance the field of study of physics much you can, or is it like to make the world a better place to live? Is there a specific purpose for science?
I would say science, the point of science is to progress society, to increase our knowledge. So basically, there are two sides to it, in my opinion. There's people who care about knowledge, discovery. So like they want to find more about the how. Like, how does this work? How does everything work? That's interesting. So for a lot of researchers and scientists, this is the point. For a lot of them, and especially on the applied side, they want to solve a real problem. So there's a problem that's currently burning, and they want to find a solution for it, and a solution that's actually effective, that will help the end customer or the end user. And that's everybody have a different answer to this question. To me, these are the most two compelling answers.
So, is there a scientific discovery that we haven't made yet that you thought maybe we should have made? Like maybe, maybe we should discover gold on Mars, or maybe we should have flying cars. Like, what's the scientific discovery you thought, man, how do we not have this yet?
If we can figure out how to teleport, that'd be awesome. But that's it's kind of a joke. I don't know if ever will. The thing that I really wish we can figure out is communication without words, because of course there's sign language,
Like telepathy or something like that?
telepathy. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say there's definitely some form of communication that
Mhm.
people have without using words,
Mhm.
and there's so many different ways to communicate. So how can you do this in a way that is effective with the most number of people? And of course, social media is one example, right? Like you can actually, with social media, you can reach a lot of people and kind of change the way they think, which is extremely profound when you think about like the elections coming up in a few days. How does this work? How does this influence the decisions that are going to be made in a democratic society like the US?
So, how do we encourage more kids to become scientists? Like kids like 13, 14 years old. How do we encourage more people to get into science?
I ask myself this all the time. I have a child of my own, and I want her to at least appreciate the science, because to me it's one way to actually get to the bottom of the problem instead of like solving it with patterns that aren't necessarily accurate, like traditions that may or may not actually be relevant to a particular problem, but it's just what people have been doing for a long time. um, when I talk to younger people, I basically try to get to the bottom of what they care about. And I don't necessarily want them to be scientists, because we don't need a society that's full of scientists. We need a society that actually appreciates science. So, as an artist, as an engineer, as a baker, you want to basically make decisions that are going to help you. They're going to help the society around you. And often, if you're relying on credible information that is backed by data, that is backed by science, you tend to make better decisions.
So, from your point of view, what makes someone a good scientist or even a great scientist?
I think there is a rush to pushing out your results that really damages the quality of science. So we talked about it briefly because flag planting is a thing. And in my experience, the best scientists I've worked with are the ones who tend to take their time understanding the problem, understanding the actual problem, instead of just trying to find a solution that's going to get them published. Because there's a huge difference between trying to actually get to the bottom of the problem and actually understand what problems matters the most. So I'd say this is a big part of it, is trying to understand the problem that you're solving. An even more important one, in my opinion, I don't see people kind of like emphasizing it enough in education, is addressing the right problem. Because we tend, again, as scientists, oftentimes we get obsessed a little bit with the solution. So, like, I love this method. It's something that's super cool. I want to build on it, right? But what is the problem that this method is trying to solve? Why are you going to make this change? So the idea of like identifying the problem that's actually burning is going to be critical for us to make real progress in the society and actually advance our global society to a better place. As long as we're kind of like holding on to the first problem that encounters us and intrigues us, it's hard for us to kind of like get the bad ideas, the bad, the obvious but not necessarily important problems out of the way in order to get to the most critical ones that actually need to be addressed.
So, you're saying, and I agree with you, it's more important to spend more time finding the right problem to answer versus spending time finding the answer for the wrong problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. A lot of people get that wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it really hurts. Like when you think about it, so many people I've seen so many people work for like a year or two on a problem, and like years later they recognize, why did we actually do this? Like
Mhm.
this did even then it if we thought about the importance of this problem, we wouldn't have done it. And it's, again, part of it is, the ecosystem around us, like, is kind of like pushing us to do certain things or to rush certain outcomes, whatever you're working on. The idea of, like, you already spent too much time working on this thing. You might as well continue working on it. And like,
Yeah.
1 month leads to another, and 1 year leads to another.
And this, you invest so much time, like you can't go back, because then you, in your mind, you think I've wasted a year on this problem. Like I have to keep solving it.
And yes, and in science, you have specialties, right? Like, so people develop this, like, deep expertise in a topic, and it becomes very scary for them to leave that scientific field or sub field, And it's one of the issues I grappled with a lot, because throughout my career, I was very intentional about, like, solving the most impactful problem I could solve in this time, given the circumstance, right? Like, so it's something I really live by, and that often required, changing what I'm working on. So I switched from NLP to science of science, and from science of science to genomics, and then back to work on science of science. And it's really interesting to to go from the expert level to the beginner level again.
Yeah.
Because it's humbling, right? Like, when you develop expertise in an area, you're used to be, the expert in the room. So somebody, at least, there's a decent amount of people who can learn from you. And when you decide to go to, for example, switch to genomics, or understand how the neural connections in your brain work, you're going back to, school, right? And it's for some, it's very inspiring, and it's kind of like a beautiful journey of its own. And I happen to actually derive a lot of value and meaning from having that experience. But for many scientists, it's really challenging to go back to that place.
So obviously, there's very many different fields of science, right? But is there a certain field of science that you think is going to have the most investment in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Like this field's going to really like expand, so to speak?
I mean, it's hard to predict the future. So I can't really answer this question, with confidence. But there's definitely a number of areas that are currently, there's a lot of need for it, right? So sustainability is a big one. There's a lot of need. So the emphasis here is, you can approach this question from different angles. Like, there tends to be, like, a number of ideas that are, developing. And from those ideas, you can recombine them in ways that really transform everything. So needless to say, artificial intelligence these days has really transformed a lot of industries. And so the combination of artificial intelligence with other expertise is what I call holistic intelligence, is how you can actually transform a variety of different fields, because oftentimes the breakthroughs happen at the intersection of fields, not just within one field. And, the recent Nobel Prize winners and, the reasons they got them is a great example of that, where, for example, intersection of biology and AI was a big part of, like, how to synthesize proteins that do a certain function that we care about. So that's, of course, like, AI and biology is a huge one. And like that I would call it, like, applying AI for biological purposes or biological processes, or the other way around. So basically taking inspiration from biology in order to develop better AI. And then, like, the culmination of it, what, you can call it neurosymbolic artificial intelligence. As a society, we have individuals, every individual have capacity, can do things. But when we organize ourselves and we create some kind of organization and, have a structure that allows us to perform at a higher level, deliver more value, we achieve more. We create synergy by aligning our incentives. So that happens at the human level. How can we do this in the machine level or at the machine learning models? Because every model is designed for a certain purpose, to fulfill a certain kind of prediction, let's say. And if we are able to combine the capacities of these different models in a way that aligns the incentives of those, basically the owners of those models, along with human values, then we are able to get human intelligence, holistic intelligence that kind of creates an organization of humans and models. So that's one way to think about the future of neurosymbolic AI. There are many other ways. For example, integration of the brain signal with everything else that we have, because right now you interact with your computers using typing or speech, sometimes eye detection. There is a lot of research that's been happening in the last few years on how can you like read the electromagnetic field in your brain. So some of it is invasive, some of it is not invasive, and then complement the information that you're getting from the human. Um, a lot of people find it scary, and I don't blame them, especially if you're gonna go to like install a chip in your brain.
Yeah, I don't know about getting the Neuralink chip. I don't know about that one. Maybe after me and people have, I might do it, right? But yeah, after one of the first chance, no, no. Um, so from your point of view, do you think there's any industry or job field that would not be impacted by AI? Or AI is gonna impact everything?
It's hard to imagine, honestly, the extent to which this is gonna reach, right? One of the safer places for now is basically taking care, like jobs that require a high degree of emotional intelligence. We haven't done as AI, researchers or field, we haven't really spent as much of an effort to kind of like simulate the emotional intelligence that is in humans. And part of it is because it's not as material. Like the way people take care of each other, sometimes it's the way you look at someone. Sometimes you're like in the caress them. It's not as rigid, or it's not as easy to capture the substance of that value, and therefore it's hard to replicate it using a machine learning model. So that's for now. I think, for example, nursing is a reasonably safe, position. I know that in the U.S., for example, in North America in general, there's a huge shortage in medical staff, so including doctors, including nurses. I don't know the statistics for other countries, but these are two jobs that will still benefit and can leverage AI to do their work more efficiently. But right now, the need is massive.
Let's say there's someone out there and they're scared shitless of AI. Like they think AI is the worst thing ever. It's going to destroy America, destroy human life. What can you tell this person to say, no, actually AI is going to benefit all of humanity?
I would say I don't have a desire or a strong bias to kind of like channel that message, because there is definitely, I have seen applications of AI that are harmful, and sadly the owners of those services are not putting as much of an effort as they could have to prevent the harm that could happen. So I don't view myself as somebody who's trying to like evangelize that AI is gonna make us great again or something like that, right? Um, I do think with any technology, we have to be always diligent about like what are the potential harms and what are the potential values, and how can we create this balanced view of, yeah, no technology has zero side effects. So it's not something that we have no experience with. We know that a lot of the drugs that we have in order to recover from illnesses do have side effects, and by being clear about what are these, studying them diligently, trying to understand, to minimize the negative side effects, trying to communicate very honestly about what are these potential side effects. All of these pieces that we actually developed quite a bit in the medical field can leverage when it comes to AI.
All right. So we're going to come back to AI in a minute. Next, I want to talk about, I think a month ago, you did a webinar in Cairo. It's a Cairo college. Can you talk about that? You remember what I'm talking about? But like 30 days in Cairo is, what was it? Um, I think it was in Cairo. The webinar, Dr. Ammar will draw an experience to AI, Microsoft. You remember what I'm talking about? It's
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
impact challenge, what it was.
Yeah,
That's right.
impact challenge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, there's a transformational time that happens for people towards the end of their degrees in engineering in many schools, including Egyptian schools. I'm from Egypt. I grew up in Egypt, so I want to pay back. Um, but it's a program that we can do everywhere, and we plan to do everywhere eventually. The idea is that you take for a number of years courses and like information knowledge that you pack in your brain, you pack on your computer, and you do all these sorts of exercises. And then there's the capstone project. In the US we call it capstone, or in Egypt we call it graduation project. Every country has a name for it. apparently. And basically, it's a culmination of all these skills that you developed to work on something for a number of months. And it's such a good opportunity to like rehearse, do the experiential learning. Experiential learning is the idea that we don't just read and memorize and solve exams. That's not the most effective way to actually like practice and drill down the skills that you need. While this is useful and valuable, in order to actually have the skill, in order to be able to claim expertise or experience, you want to deliberately practice the skills that you are trying to acquire. And that deliberate practice I call experiential learning. So oftentimes, all the courses I teach, so every once in a while I teach at University of Washington, various courses related to artificial intelligence and linguistics. And basically, experiential learning is how I try to integrate what students are learning in class with the skills that they need in order to actually do their jobs in the industry. And that's by achieving this, you are essentially creating a more functional society. So much of the graduates, so many of the graduates, STEM and other programs, graduate and find themselves unable to perform, and very often they go on a different path. So kind of like a waste of their time. So there's nothing happens with no reason. So there's probably some value to what they learn. But what I'm saying is, in order to channel to capitalize on this knowledge and the years that people spent in education, I wanted to nudge more of our graduates to build the experiential learning experience that's needed to make a transformation in their own mind and also for the society around them. So part of the impact challenge was picking the problem that will actually benefit the society. And then the other part is designing a solution that is based on the latest scientific literature and will enable some kind of change in your society, however small it is.
And is this the same thing as the Global AI Summit, or those two different conferences?
I would love to talk about the Global AI Summit because it was not on my radar, to be honest, but I got an invitation to participate.
And this was in the Middle East somewhere?
It was in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in Riyadh. It was my first time in Riyadh for like 20 years. I actually grew up in Riyadh, so there's a significant, like historical connection that I have with this country and with Riyadh in particular. And going back, it felt like I'm going to a different country, honestly. My first day there, I was shocked by how much the country has changed. And reading, of course, we all like heard the news, because it was making, like the front pages, Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia. It was actually in 2016, around the time when we had, kind of like a lot of interesting political drama in the US. It feels like the country is being divided. And I think it's impressive to see how Saudi Arabia has been very focused on diversifying their economy from just reliance on oil to a variety of science-based.
And that's mainly from, I don't know his name, like there's a crown prince that's driving all that change, right? I have his face in my mind. I have no idea what his name is, but he's a driving force mainly, right? That crown prince.
Exactly. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Okay, yeah, he's like the driving force, like modernize the country, economic diversification, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I would say, having spent a few weeks there, I can tell you it definitely dissipated to the society. I see a spark in people's eyes that tell me that they are excited, that they are working hard to achieve a vision that they actually believe in. And that's something that, it's inspiring to see people, an entire generation who is trying to make a substantial change and progress in their society. And, it is actually something that they're not trying to do just for themselves, but for the world as a whole. So this is kind of like it connects, like this idea is connected to the history and the tradition in Saudi Arabia and in the Arab world and in the Islamic world. Of course, there's a lot of like misinformation about those regions, but the culture itself has very much a desire to spread prosperity everywhere. So that's kind of like the goal, like on the long term.
Yeah. So what is the state of AI in the Middle East, right? Egypt, Saudi Arabia, like are they like way, way far behind the United States? Are they like right there with us? What's the state of the AI industry, so to speak, there?
So things are moving quite a bit. As you know, the U.S. And China has been kind of like competing, I'd say, in various fields in technology. There's a great report that I helped put together, came out of the National Science Foundation last year, and it compares the critical technologies that are considered to be critical for the United States and how it compares to other countries. So strongly recommend taking a look at it, get like a deep dive into that question. Um, when it comes to the Middle East, I see a lot of progress. Not all the countries are able to invest as well as Saudi Arabia, but some do. So, for example, Qatar is advancing quite a bit. Emirates has advanced a lot. Um, Turkey has been also making a lot of strides along this front. Yeah, these are the countries that come to mind. I've seen a lot of production coming out. Also, Iran. Iran has
All right.
advanced quite a bit.
So of course, like you said, everyone they say AI, they think United States or China. But there's a country out there like is making great strides in AI that people not might know about, like some kind of random country out there, like, oh wow, they're not at all the United States China level, but like, okay, they're doing some good things in the fields of AI that you're like, okay, this country, I don't believe it.
I mean, definitely Saudi Arabia. I invite you to look at this global AI index. I was surprised the other day to see that it's stopping the leaderboard, actually above China and the US in terms of strategic planning for the government. Right. So I think part of it is the way the US government is decentralized makes it harder to create alignment sometimes. Um, but that's not the case for China. So I was a bit surprised, but it's interesting.
And you said you were born in Egypt.
I was born in Egypt, yes,
How often do you go back and visit?
pretty much every year.
Every year, okay.
Yeah,
And like, did you like immigrate to the United States? Can you talk about how that worked out? Like,
yeah. So around 2010, right before the Arab Spring, I, I decided it's time to start my PhD program. To also, uh, my my daughter was on the way, and we moved to the US. That it was a pretty big moment because where you live dictates a lot about what you learn, your experience in life. So I spent a few months in Seattle area with Microsoft Research. I was then working for Microsoft Research, doing machine translation research, and then I started my PhD program at Carnegie Mellon University. So I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One of one of my memories in Pittsburgh is, first year, I believe, uh, I had a pretty old car back then, and the snow, I wasn't used to the snow, so I had to, like remove the snow of my car, and then my daughter was kind of like pushing buttons inside the car, and she got herself locked, and it's like I had like a panic moment.
the worst parents, the parents' worst nightmare, right?
Yeah, and I experienced like the beauty and wonder of calling the fire department, and like they are opening like in 5 minutes the car was open and no windows were broken. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
But yeah, so I guess to answer your question, yeah, I moved to the U.S. mostly because I wanted to go to the best university
Mhm.
for artificial intelligence, and I think I did.
So what got you interested initially in AI?
Sorry, what's the question?
What got you interested originally in AI?
It's actually genomics. I did an internship in IBM back in 2006. Even before then, 1 year before, I was in Procter and Gamble, and it was just like project management. Basically modeling the factory processes around production of the powder that's needed, like for the detergent. We wanted to map it to a digital form. So that was like my first experience with like the idea of mapping a real world model into a digital replica of it. But we didn't do any AI with that. And then following year, we did with IBM. I learned how to build machine learning models, train machine learning models that predict things about our genomic sequences. And of course, I had to learn about the DNA, how it works, and all of this. And it was interesting. And then I came to the realization that not only can we program what's happening in real life using functions like, like code that we write, we can actually write the structure, write the model that will learn how these things happen by observing the environment. It's kind of like foundationally important. So I couldn't like resist the idea that I should abandon the other direction which I was working on, security. Cyber it wasn't called cybersecurity, but at the time, but basically wireless sensors. You have a lot of wireless sensors roaming in the environment, and you're basically trying to secure them so that an attacker does not like dominate and like take control over your resources. So that I was focused on security, and then when I learned about AI, I just couldn't resist switching my focus. Also aligned with an opportunity in Microsoft research that opened up, so I was like, yeah, I'm taking it.
So a lot of people are concerned about AI data security. Like is there a way to prevent like to protect data or privacy with AI? I mean, to me, it seems like it'd be kind of hard because like once you get on your serial phone, hey, I'm Jason, whatever, 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 they have the information in the database forever, right? So how do you protect people's data? I mean, is it possible to even do that?
So there are two pieces here. Like, so you're talking about how can AI help us with security, or are you saying how do we secure the AI models? Because these are
Yeah,
two different
the
ways.
second one.
Okay, so AI models, are vulnerable. Like, there's no way around accepting that when you adopt a new technology and rely on it, you're introducing new vulnerability. So, including, all the things that we use in our homes, for example, to like camera, detection or whatever. Once you start relying on this thing to secure yourself, you become vulnerable to the flaws of this new technology, right? And it's really a question of how are we gonna approach this? It's like it's a never-ending game, like between attackers and defenders. And my cousin Hani Ammar works as a senior cybersecurity analyst, and it's every conversation I have with him, I'm learning about how AI is being used in his organization to secure systems. Of course, he's on the defender side. But the same way, it's also used by the attackers in order to have more complicated attacks. So, for example, when you look at your phone to unlock it, well, who knows if this is your face or somebody wearing a mask? There are definitely companies that are focused on addressing this problem. So, trying to tell the difference between this your actual face or a mask that looks like your face, or is the photo? But it's a pretty hard problem.
So what's the call? I think it's called singularity when AI can think for themselves. Do you think that's coming sooner or later, or you think that will never come? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a distraction. I don't existential questions like this tend to distract us from the real problems that are relevant today. So, for example, uh, there are wars happening today that are using where weapons are using AI to kill innocent people, and that's a very material like negative effect that if we're not trying to think about addressing these material negative effects and trying to divert the conversation to the future, which it's unclear to anyone how to even address this threat, then I find a little bit of a waste of our time.
Okay, makes sense. So we talked earlier about AI in nursing, AI in medical field, AI bio. Is there a certain industry or field that you think AI can have the greatest impact and make that field that much better?
You mean if influence of AI on other fields?
Yeah, yes.
Lots, really, and biology is the biggest one in my mind. That it's just my bias because I care all about that integration of AI and biology. I imagine also energy is a huge one. So how can we optimize the use of energy because so much energy is wasted? So is there a way for us to like identify that? Hey, actually, one of my projects, student groups decided to work on this, optimize the energy usage in homes. Basically, try to use AI to say, hey, you forgot to turn off this thing, and it's costing a lot of energy, right? Like that energy can be used for something else. And at the houses level, it's not that significant. I would say, in aggregate, it would, of course, but you know, Facebook, for example, doesn't have enough energy. to run the models they want
Yeah,
to
I
run.
saw recently where Microsoft is like gonna restart up the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant in 3 Mile Island and use all the energy from that for all the AI stuff.
It's unsurprising to me when you look at the usage of nuclear energy in the US compared to Europe, for example. It's minuscule. And
Yeah.
I don't,
And it's been proven it's the safest out there. Of course, when shit goes bad, it goes bad. Of course, like
which is, I think that's like the biggest reason in the US we have traumas from past experiences
yeah,
and we're trying to avoid, having that experience again, which is reasonable, but also it's work. It's putting in the work, right? Like to actually ensure the safety of
yes,
the everyone on the field.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I could be wrong about this, but I think a lot of people think AI is the kind of recent, like the last 5, 10 years. AI hasn't been around for a long time, hasn't it?
Has not, is that what you're
And it
saying?
has been around for a long
Well, the
time.
ideas came, I'd say, in the 50s.
Yes, that's our thought. 50s, yeah.
Yeah, but then it takes a long time for ideas to transform into actual demos or implementations that demonstrate the value. And there are two big pieces to this, right? Like there's the software piece, or like actually having the right models to solve the problems we care about, and the other piece is having the hardware that's necessary to run these. And they are both necessary. So it took us a long time to do each of them. I would say the pivotal moment was like around 2011 when we had enough compute, basically, effective compute that enables us to solve hard problems like ImageNet, where you're trying to like take any image, trying to predict what's in it, and that was it's a hard problem. Perception, it's a hard perception problem. Translation was another one around year 2007, I would say, or six. Google uh, launched a number of translation pairs, and translation is one of the hardest things humans are capable of doing. But it's like a one task that you focus on and try to achieve. So yeah, it definitely took 50 and more years to get there.
So next, talk about this. On your bio, it says you co-founded the ACM chapter at Alexandria University. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's actually fond memory. I so University of Alexandria University is the first university in Africa that had a computer science department. So it's actually and continues to be the strongest department for computer science in Africa. So I talked to my friends who are managing teams and in Microsoft and Google and Facebook, and you're hiring from all over. And based on their experiences, these are the strongest candidates that apply to their teams. And however, we have limited resources. The faculty members have only so much time. The financial resources of the university, are not enough to give the students all the experiences, especially the experiential learning experiences that you need in order to become top-notch students. So I saw that gap, and I felt like there's nothing stopping us from supplementing what the university is capable of doing as a university or as a student body. So basically, we put together. I studied what other universities are doing to address this issue, and I learned that there's something called ACM chapters present in different
And what does
universities.
ACM stand for?
Oh, Association for Computing Machinery.
Okay.
It's a international organization that basically it's scientific. It's focused on computer science as a field, and they have journals and they have a variety of services and activities that promote that field.
And how long did you teach at the University of Alexandria?
Not long, only one semester.
A semester.
Yeah. So I was a teaching assistant. I taught a few courses, and soon after, Microsoft Research hired me, and
Okay.
it was
Somebody says this, like, you always hear about there's the library at Alexandria, get destroyed by fire, or whatever. Did y'all ever talk about at the University of Alexandria, like how much knowledge was lost, like why it was lost, like, what they knew, didn't know, like, you have those conspiracy theories, like there was so much knowledge there that fire destroyed it and the human race went back 1, 2, 300 years, lots of knowledge. Any kind of conversations like that going at the university?
I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like everybody knows, it's not actually controversial that it was not. accidental. It was
Yeah,
deliberate.
I read somewhere like the Romans put it on fire or something like that. Like, different. I can't remember the Romans. Somebody put on fire, like, do whatever they were doing. So yeah,
It's just a reminder that we, as a human civilization, we all lose when we wars cost a lot, right?
Mhm.
Like the cost of war is significant, and eventually we're all burned by it. Even the person who's like attacking, and like if they succeed in, for example, that mission, oftentimes you see soldiers and like generals like committing suicide later because they reflecting on what happened didn't want this to happen, right? So sometimes it's hard to experience that. And I'm sorry, I realize that might be like a sensitive topic to talk about.
No, no worries, no worries. So let's take a smart person for say the year 1500, right? Any like Leonardo da Vinci, whatever smart person there is, and you put him today, right? Brought him today, like time travel. Would they think they'd be overwhelmed by all the tech? Do you think they'd be like, man, you people are so smart now, or they'd be like, this is all you've done in 500 years? Like, what have you done in 500 years, right?
So, okay, I have somebody in mind, and that person will probably judge us by how judge a society by how strong the weakest link is. Uh, and basically, if you think about the string of groups, um, one of the measures of strength for the group as a whole is, are we taking care of each other so that we are together strong, or when somebody falls, they're gone, like we don't care about them. It's one of the things that I notice cultural differences across different parts of the world, and it's not ideal. Like capitalism, for example, doesn't give us this incentive, right? It's to take care of other people, and of course, every ideology or has its problems, but it's something that I think we need to do more of in the Western civilization, to like think about how can we take care of each other, how can we achieve more social welfare, like you know taxes, of course, is a huge part of this, but it's not only a question of like the money that you pay. It's more of a cultural awareness situation.
So do you think this economic system does a better job of that?
Definitely, some economic systems address this issue in a more effective way, and there is actually an economist who won the Nobel Prize for some of his work in kind of like decomposing the idea that we should try to bridge equality or the inequalities in our society. So the premise of his theory is that, see if I can reconstruct it, briefly. It's been a while since I read it. Basically, by empowering our society as a whole to have greater capacity, we're increasing the capacity of the society as a whole, and the economy is gonna be more effective. It's gonna be more advancing at a faster pace. Whereas if you look at the short term or the individual, players, they may benefit more from leveraging and exploiting the resources and kind of like depleting these resources, including human resources, uh, without having to worry about the sustainability of the operation or the overall market.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the high level. So of course he gets into the details
Yeah.
a lot more, which I need to brush up on.
So next question. Would you rather like stay you at right now, keep on living here, or go 500 years in the future or 500 years in the past?
Wow, that's a great question.
I think there's pros and cons to each one. Like, okay, you 500 years in the future might be all this scientific advancement, everyone is having a great life, or it could be like Mad Max Thunderdome, right? You know, and,
That's a great question. You're
and,
right.
and if 500 years have passed, I want to go just to see what it was, but like, can you make it 5 years have passed? All the diseases, all the stuff going on, right? Like, I don't think we were built to survive 500 years have passed. Like, I would love to go back in the Roman era time, see the Roman Empire, stuff like that. But yeah,
Okay,
personally, I would stay here personally, right? I just think it's an intriguing question, right?
I totally think I would like to visit,
Mhm.
but I want to be able to come back.
Yeah, but he kind of come back,
No,
and if shit goes back, and I put some money, come back instantly, right?
yeah, yeah. No, I read some stories in my childhood, like with that idea in mind. It's always fascinating to me how widely different our life is from, you know, just 500 years ago.
Yeah.
500 years is not that
Not
long.
only that, like people don't realize 900, like maybe 100, years ago, we had no electricity. You had to use the bathroom outside. Like, no, you had to take cold showers. People don't realize like how far we were advanced in sort of period of time.
Absolutely. And if you go to certain parts in, Asia or Africa, you can get a sense of that.
Yeah, that's very true. So crazy question. Is time travel possible? Like the physics of time travel, is that something that can be done, you think? Or is that just like too far out the realm of possibility?
To be honest, I'm not qualified
Okay.
to answer this
Okay.
question, but yeah, I mean, if it is, you know, here's my money. I want to go.
That would be crazy. Um, so what does it mean? Like, talk about the process of defending your PhD thesis, right? Is it just a matter of getting in front of three people and how not time, but how hard is it, right? Is like they're like is it like how much um educational vigor they put you through, right?
So, great question, because a lot of people are thinking about starting a PhD program, and I've talked to many people. So I advise a number of people who are interested in making decisions, and I take a lot of pleasure in like trying to help in that capacity. The first question I ask them is why? Why do you care to do it? Because it's so hard. It requires resilience. Like, so resilience, of course, is important to achieve pretty much anything that's difficult in life.
Because it's like 3, 4 years of your life, you're getting paid some money, but not money that you should be getting paid. It's probably putting stress on your marriage. You're married, like you probably have no social life. It's like you're all in that amount of time, right?
Absolutely. All the things that you mentioned are the reasons that it's important to know why you're doing it. Like, and have the confidence that this is actually something that you care a lot about.
And if money's the reason, you probably don't need to do it, right?
Money is not should not be the reason to do a PhD. Absolutely. Um, to me, the reason was like a real desire to learn more about a scientific area, and my job at the time. I was a scientist or research engineer in Microsoft Research. I still didn't have the time I need in order to advance my skills and knowledge in the area that I'm working on. So it was kind of like a strong desire to learn. That was the motivation for me. And from a practical point of view, like in a place like Microsoft Research or Google Research, it's much harder to advance, like climb up the ladder and get more senior positions and have a research agenda of your own to explore the problems that you care about, not what somebody else cares about, without having that credential and experience.
So in your career, you had some great jobs like Google, Microsoft, IBM, other companies. How have you been able to manage getting such great jobs? Like, how's that worked for you?
You mean why did I get the job, or well, I'm not
Like how
sure.
do you go from one great job to another great job to another great job? Like most people that have a great job, they get laid off or leave the job, they go another job that like might not be so good, right? You've been able to like manage like have like same level of jobs from what I see, right? Like same type of capacity, like great jobs you've had, right?
First of all, thank you. Humbled by what you're saying. To me, it's really about doing, like, putting your heart in the work, because in my mind, the reason I got better jobs is because of referral. Honestly, like, people write good referrals for you when you've done good work with them, and that's like part of it. Of course, the interviews demonstrate, like, if after you make a referral for somebody, they interview you. But oftentimes, really strong candidates don't get the interview because nobody's referring them. So, like, if you're looking for a job, the most important thing is to get a strong referral, and then you'll be invited to interview to like demonstrate that you actually can do this job well. But the interview itself is not actually enough to test the skill. In my mind, the interview is just like the handshake, and then you come in and you start working with the team, and if the team is happy with your performance, you continue building with them, and that's the real test. That's the real interview in my mind. The first few months. So with that in mind, I think I approach every position starting with as a new learning opportunity. It's like I'm a sponge and I want to learn everything I can. I also bring my fresh perspective. So I'm not shy about telling everyone in the team respectfully what I think of, the work that's happening and where the gaps are. Because that once you are in the organization for a while, you lose that fresh perspective. Like whatever you come with from a different organization, you no longer have that perspective because you're now an insider. So I use that opportunity to like transfer as much as I can of my own perspectives to the leadership and other team members to really help. Like when you work in an organization, you don't care about the organization as a whole. Why are you even here? Like, of course, you can get a salary, but I never really approached my work as just salary because I don't find that interesting enough, I guess.
So you talk the importance of having referrals. Can you also talk about the importance of networking? Because even scientists need to network, like talk about the importance of networking for young scientists out there. I think like a lot of, make this up me, but I think a lot of the developers, scientists, like, oh, I'm gonna be hired on my skill set or only, right? But that's not true, right? I mean, you got to network and meet people correctly, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And networking is a skill. You can get better at it. At some point in my life, I realized I'm not networking at all, and I'd say that was 2011, um, maybe 2010. I decided, I'm gonna have lunch every day with somebody who's interesting because I have lunch every day, and other people have lunch around the same time anyway. I was gonna send a bunch of invitation
Yeah.
to people I'm intrigued by. I want to learn more about your perspective. Jason, could you teach me about how to do a podcast? And we did that.
Yeah.
Like, and you can learn something from everybody who walked in different shoes, because you don't have their wealth of experiences. And if the intentions are there, you can actually learn quite a bit, you know, two-way conversation. And I had some of my memorable, like lunch meetings with Arul Menezes was like my skip manager. Like he was not supposed to talk to me, but he was so humble and willing to help. Right. So I remember him giving me some like very meaningful like pearls of wisdom, if you will, that stays with me until today.
So change the subject a little bit. What do you do for fun?
And I do a lot of things for fun, but the biggest one is paddleboarding and dancing. So basically, I enjoy spending a lot of time on the water. It's kind of like put me in a zen space. It's like I don't need to be with anybody else. Just like kind of like spirituality. Like it's kind of like cleanse my soul um, to be on the water.
I heard that I've never done paddleboarding, but I heard that you have to have really strong calves to do paddleboarding.
Well, you don't actually need to be very. So paddleboarding is one of those sports that you can do, you know, without being very healthy, without being like having great fitness, which is part of the reason I like it. Like when I started doing paddleboarding, I wasn't particularly like physically fit. My friend Tran Lu, who you know really got me into paddleboarding, uh, was working for the Allen Institute back then, and she invited me to go on the water, and like we went. There was a few other people, and then I told her I want to go to the race. I'm not good, but I want to go to the race because I want to see the best people who are doing this. This is like one of my, ideas. I always want to, learn from the best, right? Like even if you're so far from them, there's nothing wrong about, trying to acquire some of the skills and habits that those experts do. And, eventually you're gonna get better. You don't have to be like, world class paddleboarding, athlete.
So is it safe to presume that you're a pretty good swimmer?
Yeah, I am. I grew
Okay.
up. I grew up in Alexandria, so it's a coastal city, and
Okay.
we were pretty diligent about
Yeah, it's
spending
probably not
the.
smart to do paddleboard. You don't know how to swim.
Well, with the right, definitely strong recommendation for anyone to learn how to swim
Yeah.
because it's a safety measure, right?
Yeah.
But if you're paddleboarding, you definitely want to swim. But even if you don't know how to swim, it's not actually the end of the world because the board itself is a safety device.
Okay. Just grab on the board then.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you're supposed to always be using a leash, so attaching your body to the board. So even if you get knocked off, there's like wind or whatever, you can use the leash to go back on the board and hold on to it.
And what kind of dancing do you do? Any
I
specific kind of
enjoy,
dancing?
yeah, I enjoy salsa dancing,
Okay.
especially ballroom strong.
Okay.
We live in Seattle.
Okay.
I would say it's the best, ballroom dancing studio in Seattle.
Nice. Nice. And that can be a good workout too, can it?
Absolutely, yeah. You sweat like crazy when you're dancing.
Yeah. And then how do you take care of yourself, right? Like either like spiritually, mentally, physically, how do you take care of your mental health, all that kind of stuff?
It's a lot. There's a lot going on, especially when you're you know founder, co-founder, and all the responsibility of life. It takes a toll on us, and I think if we don't make the time to take care of ourselves, like you said, it doesn't just happen, right? So I try to schedule it. With everything that's important in life, I find it's important to put time on the calendar and like be doesn't you don't have to do it every day, but there's a time on my calendar every day to take care of myself. Every day is different. Sometimes it's about going to the gym. Sometimes it's like going out with a friend, and sometimes it's actually connecting with your family and making sure that you have this healthy rhythm in life.
So from your point of view, do you think for tech people, tech founders, do you think USA is still the land of opportunity like it used to be before? Or like other countries surpassing us in this like entrepreneurial mindset?
It's a hard question to answer because I can only speak about my experience. And I would say different countries have different things going for them. So, for example, as a startup co-founder, you don't want to be bleeding a lot. So you benefit from being in an ecosystem where your life expenses can be very low. So of course that's especially true if you're just trying to do this fresh out of college and you don't have any savings. So one of the things that are going for me is I spent a number of years in corporate America, so I was able to save a bunch that enables me to go for a while. So that's one of the things that's not going well for us in the US in terms of the startup ecosystem. But one of the things that is very good for us is the number of venture capitalists who are here. But it's a double-edged sword because, as you probably know, Jason, most startups don't actually get VC funding, and VC funding is actually considered. Everybody I talked to who actually got funded by a VC, they they told me we wish we didn't need it because you lose a lot. You lose a lot of like equity. You lose a lot of control over the mission or the vision of your future, how the company is going to progress when you buy into that kind of like dynamic or relationship.
And then if you get VC money, most of them still fail, right? VC money is not you know, a, a guaranteed success your company's going to make it. A lot of times it's an indicator you're going to fail.
I mean, it's definitely like a double-edged sword, right? Because you have now more liquid to, spend on the activities that you think are important. But like my friend um, Mike tells me, it's it's actually it's pressure to rush things out.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we rush things out without thinking carefully about them, we make mistakes. So when you have a limited budget, you're very careful how you're going to spend it. But when you have lots of budget, it's the question of like how much we're going to spend on this becomes less relevant because you're trying to run faster and you want to meet the expectations of like doing 50x 100x valuation of your company, which I'd like to do for my company.
Yeah.
Any founder want to see that kind of like hyper growth, but sometimes it's cripples us.
Yeah. And some people will say, well, I'm only giving 10% of my company for $100,000. I don't care what you say. If someone gives you money, no matter how small that equity is, they're gonna want to say they're gonna like you're gonna at least take the phone call, right? You're just gonna have a conversation, right? Even though somebody you disagree with, yeah, people don't give you money for nothing. They're gonna want to say they want to have impact. Maybe you get lucky and someone invests $1 million and they say do what you want to. That's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, I think life is about trade-off, right? Like you always are making trade-offs in life, and it's not easy always to make the right trade-off. But I think being diligent about, first of all, are you gonna go that path? Because it takes a lot of effort. Like so, um, you know, as I'm
Yep.
exploring how to sustain the business, I think about all the different options and pursue them a little bit to understand what it's like. Because it's one thing to read about it, and it's one thing to actually go through conversations with VCs and see what they're asking you. One of the great benefits I learned from talking to VCs is the potential issues that will happen when I solve the current set of problems, because they've seen it, before. They've done this kind of process of observing a company starting many, many times. So they are able to come from the future and tell me, by the way, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 2 years, you're gonna face this challenge. How are you gonna act then? And those questions are extremely valuable.
So the name of your company is holistic intelligence for global good.
That's right.
Can you talk about your company real fast? How it got started, what you focus on now, what your vision for it is in the future.
Absolutely. So my expertise in science of science, meaning how can we use machine learning to have a model of the scientific literature. And as I mentioned before, science communication is critical for our economy to function. So if you're not able to communicate to the customer the credibility of their product, you're not able to communicate to the engineers the credibility of the scientific methods and how to actually implement them. If you're not able to communicate to other scientists how they are going to benefit from the contribution that you did, and if you're not able to communicate to the decision makers why they should invest in that scientific area, none of this happens. So in my mind, the backbone of the science-based economy is to have strong science communication. And it's a blind spot because every team tends to focus on their function, right? So scientists like to do their science, and engineers like to do their engineering. And it's what you know how to do well. And it's really the creating the alignment is where I see a lot of companies fail, even big companies. So some of the teams I worked with, in the industry, I wouldn't say they were able to solve this problem of alignment super well. And that by learning, you learn from both positive examples and negative examples. So in my company, Holistic Intelligence for Global Good, we basically created a product that enables scientists and other players in the organization who care about science to integrate this science communication across the board. So we're starting with the scientists because first of all, this is our strongest network. So in terms of like the ideal customer profile we're reaching out to begin with, our entry to the market is through scientists. And once you establish credibility with the scientists, which we've been able to achieve that with a few hundred customers in just like a couple of months, we're able to basically establish the credibility of the product. So more and more people, both decision makers and downstream engineers and marketers, can basically leverage that science and the credibility of that comes with it in order to deliver the bottom line objectives of the organization.
So how do you find the scientists? Like, there's people in your network you already had. Like, was it like a certain type of science, a certain field? How do you go about finding these scientists?
It's not an obvious answer because there are so many different ways. But for us, because me and my co-founders have a long history in University of Washington, University of Carnegie Mellon University, Waterloo University, Alexandria University. So there's a number of places that it's a very natural place to start with. So you leverage your network, you leverage the people that you already know, and word of mouth basically for the most part. And then things like the Impact Challenge help because you actually reach out to the audience who may not know about your product, but they have real need for it because they're going to do their graduation projects anyway. And they want to be proud of their work and they want to be able to get a job in a few months. So basically creating alignment between what the target customer needs and what you're able to offer is basically the short answer. But that happens in a variety of ways.
Can you talk about how you're going to make money off this?
Yeah, so basically there are two paths, B2C. So you basically get subscription from professors and research assistants to use the product, pretty much like what you pay for ChatGPT. And the other path is B2B. So when you have an organization who know they rely on science to get the objectives of the organization, they want to invest in products and services that will enable their scientists to be effective and efficient. So I want to decompose effective and efficient because they're widely different. Effective, in my mind, is solving the right problem, and efficient is solving it fast and good, right? So that's
big difference.
Yeah.
And you and your team building this all by yourself, or you have like, are you outsourcing it, or how's that working?
I have a team, so I definitely would not be able to build a product alone, and I am, everybody. Of course, as a startup founder, you got to do a lot of jobs, right? So sometimes I'm the quality control guy, sometimes I'm like the tester, sometimes I'm writing a little bit of code, but I have wonderful engineers, one in Saudi Arabia, two in Egypt. I have a wonderful chief of staff in Philippines. I have a research director in Canada, and the team is amazing. And that's not all, but
Yeah.
these are important pieces.
And so, like, how do you decide what to focus on each day, right? Because there's so many hats you got to wear, like sales, marketing, tech, blase, networking. Like, how do you decide each day? Okay, I'm got to focus on this.
To me, the way I do it, I think everybody's different. I would love to hear your answer to this because I'm sure you have your own interesting take on this question. Uh, so I'll flip the question back to you, Jason. But uh, to me, it's about having the top down. So every quarter we have OKRs. It's something I learned at other companies like Google. You at the quarterly level, like what are we going to focus on this quarter? And of course, plans change, but it's important to be deliberate about what are we planning to do this quarter and have the alignment across the team. So there's like two direction, bottom up, to like understand the needs from the bottom, and then a decision maker, the top of the organization will make it and like kind of like dissipate this alignment across the team. So everybody knows this is what we're focusing on this quarter. And then throughout the quarter, we're checking in every few weeks to see how much progress we've made on these like very material things that you can measure. And so every week I hold myself accountable and I try to ask our other team members do the same to be clear about what's like the 1 to 3 things that we're gonna focus on this week, right? So basically, having clarity and focus on at the quarterly level, at the monthly level, at the weekly level, and then every day, I have like I can't start my workday without knowing what I'm gonna do today, right? And things happen, you get distracted sometimes, but
Yeah, distraction's the biggest thing, right? Stuff comes up, but yeah, that's a big thing too.
so may I ask you this
Yeah.
question though?
So I would like to say that I do the same thing as you do, right? But a lot of times I wing it sometimes. Like right now, my company is like I have to focus on sales and tech, right? Sales bringing customers, tech to advance the product, but then sometimes like, a problem I have, like I'll be working on something that's my number one focus, and something pops up like number 8. This just take a second, so I knock out number 8, and then of course that distracts me from number one. Sometimes I even forget about number one, right? And before you know it, number one hasn't been done like in a day or 2 days, right? Oh shit, I forgot to do this, right? That's definitely a challenge I have, right? I have definitely suffered from shiny object syndrome in the past, right? They've tried bad. And because one thing I think like people tell you, I think is bad advice. Like a person will say, "Hey, founder, market number one function, sales number one, tech number one." And of course, they can't all be number one. They can't be 1A, 1B, we see. But sometimes, each thing has to be number one, right? Like, suppose you do beta test your product, and like you do a 20 beta test, 18 gives you like a discovery. You had no clue what's going on, right? Then you get to focus and we do that right. It's just, yeah, it's never any challenge.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing this because you remind me that oftentimes, even though I start with like my calendar, you know exactly what I'm gonna do today, what I blocked an hour for ends up taking like 4 hours, and I know it's the
Yeah.
most important thing. So I'm not gonna
Yeah. Or
stop.
two, like suppose like you have an hour block for something, right? And someone says, "Hey, they've been trying to they'll meet with like maybe 2, 3 weeks. Hey, I can meet at this time only, right?" And you got, okay, this guy like might be able to move your company forward or do something right. It's like, yeah, I have the calendar blocked off, different things, do different things. A lot of times, like, yeah, this is like, I don't know, just why do I even have this here?
Totally. Delegation is a big one for me. Like I've found delegation to be critical for getting things done. And it took me a while, to like let go of this is very important. I know it's very important. I gotta do it myself, and then over time you build a confidence in other team members that you work with to actually have
Yeah.
them do
The
this very
thing with
important.
that though, like I definitely agree with you, but a lot of times, like for my podcast editing, right? I've been trying to forever get rid of my podcast editing, but like I'll find someone they want like I'll make this at like $20,000. I'm not paying that, or like you get someone else on Fiverr, Upwork, or someone like man, like I don't expect to do like me, my man, can at least do like 50% as good as me, right? Like you made it worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, it's tricky. It's definitely hard.
it's definitely hard. Um, so what's you want to answer? So remember, Mister, what's the long term vision of the company?
Yeah, long-term vision is actually to create more equality in science.
Mhm.
And I believe it's doable like within my lifetime because there's a burning need for it. So I'll give you a very punchy example of where that need is. Um, there's countries like the US and the UK where there is enough funding for science to be able to attract the best scholars and the best students fresh out of college in Egypt, in Kenya, in you know Nigeria, and then we go to solve the problems that are funded by the organizations we work for, right? Because you don't choose what problems to work on until you're very senior, right? So for a very long time, you're solving problems that are important to this organization or to this society, and oftentimes it's very different than the problems that are needed for your own country and your own like the people you grew up with. And the difference between like first world problems and second world problems, it's like it is kind of painful sometimes, and a lot of people lose their sense of purpose in the process.
Mm.
Like, okay, I'm getting paid plenty, and at the same time, I don't find this meaningful enough, and a lot of people struggle with this. Right? So this is a real problem, like because we're in a first world, kind of economy. You tend to think about the higher levels of the Maslow hierarchy, so of needs. So Maslow hierarchy of needs start with safety, and then like food and shelter, which is all related. And then you think about, at the top, you're gonna think about self-actualization and like having a sense of purpose and all that crazy stuff that we talk about in the US, right? But if you're in an economy that's much less strong, you care about just like survival,
Yeah,
right?
where's my next meal coming from?
Yeah, and so when you think about this, and how can we create some balance in the equations where the problems that we're solving, even in the US, are benefiting other societies. And this is not actually a socialist perspective. It's more of a global perspective that is consistent with capitalism. And I give credit to the Nobel Prize winner, who I cannot remember the name of, who kind of like provided the substance needed in order to establish that this is the case. Basically, China, for example, one of the reasons it's advancing in a lot of ways, in ways the US is not, is that they have more of a global perspective on where the needs are. So they think of the Chinese production system as solving the needs of the world, right? And they don't mind selling their products to like poor countries, right?
Yeah.
And it is keeping their economy
Yeah.
pretty
And
strong.
it seems like China has more of a 50-year, 100-year plan where we have like a 5 to 10 year plan.
Maybe that's something that's a reflection of the organization of the government. As good as we, yeah, of course, the idea of democracy is awesome, but also sometimes I can't help thinking, in today's election,
Hmm.
right, on this election, it feels like the differences between the two parties are pretty small.
Yeah.
Like with respect to the actual, like the
It's almost
real.
like you got to pick between two of the least, like who's the least, most unqualified, who's like the most least unqualified, if that makes any sense, right?
Right. Yeah. And I'll use this opportunity to mention Jill Stein as, I don't know if she has any shot
Yeah, I don't think so. I think this is a third or fourth time run. It's usually like just like 2 to 3% of the vote,
But I will say over time, this is how movements catch on. So every year or every election year, you see the percentage of people who would vote for the Green Party
Yeah.
increasing. So maybe eventually it's going to be like a collaboration between the Democratic Party and the Green Party, or the Green Party and the Republicans. Who knows? But I'd be surprised. But who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about like haves and have-nots. You have the haves here, have-nots here. Do you think AI is going to increase that gap, or you think AI is going to be able to decrease that gap between haves and have-nots?
I don't think AI has anything to do with it. I think the cultural values have everything to do with it. If
Okay.
if we adopt the cultural values and like double down on our cultural values, like of wanting to be inclusive, yes, we will use every opportunity we have, including technology and AI and whatever advances we have, in order to provide this, maybe with different pricing models, to different tiers of users. And I grappled with this myself because I'm building a product and want it to be available to everyone. And of course, not everybody is able to afford the subscription. So there's nothing that's blocking us from having different pricing. And there's like, a minimum you cannot go beyond. But if you're making enough profit, from certain markets, you can actually like kind of like subsidize the loss that you're making at a different economy. It's about like creating this balance. You don't have to go all like down on only supporting because they're going to be bleeding a lot. But if you're able to make enough income and revenue and profit, and you reinvest some of this in order to build capacity in say Africa, and building capacity, it's a long-term investment, and those individuals may end up moving to the US or moving to the UK, and then be able to support to actually pay the subscription. So Khan Academy, for example, is a great brand, right? And it is not a for-profit organization, but it's able to deliver value to lots of people, and if they decide to monetize, they will.
So, who are your mentors? Who's mentored you? Who's mentoring now? Who's mentored you in the past?
Lots of people. This is a short answer, but I would mention like some of the people I met in the last month would be Dr. Yasser Oranizan, Dr. Tariq Al-Abbadi, Dr. Oren Etzioni, Dr. Ahmed Morsi, Dr. Khalid Ammar. There is a long list of people, and I'm afraid of missing Dee Scully. Of course, Dee Scully is a great force multiplier in my life. And honestly, I try to approach every conversation as a conversation I can learn from. But of course, some conversation turn out to be like very like inspiring, and like you come out of the conversation. So Dr. Ahmed Morsi is a good example because he's currently like leading the faculty development center in Cairo University. Cairo University is the oldest and biggest university in Egypt, and very strong scholars, despite every like all the economic and political issues in the country. And he is also a founder. He's been running the leading platform for dentists. Dentist offices need a platform to manage their the patients and the work that's happening in their offices. So he's running this company in Nebraska for a long time, and he's seen it all, like both from the academic perspective. He works in intersection of AI with biomedical. So when I come to him with an issue that's kind of like I'm grappling with in the business, it's a very short conversation. Like he's seen it before, and he's like he doesn't actually. I love that about him. He tells me, "Please read this book, and you'll find the answer there." And it's of course he can also give me like the pill, but I think his approach is like you're gonna reflect a lot more, and you're gonna like unpack this question a lot better if you like go to the book length version of the answer.
And so the second part of the question, to me, the more important part: who are you mentoring right now?
That is a sensitive question. I can't answer because some of the conversations I have, I may perceive as I'm mentoring them. They may perceive it as something else.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So you taught at Alexandria University, Carnegie Mellon University of Washington. Your experience, like, of course, you only did one semester at Alexandria. Is like a student, like they all want to learn the same, like, or is a student different locations, or like a student that's a student, so to speak?
You mean the disparities between students in different locations?
Yeah.
Huge.
Okay.
And this is part of the pains that, or like the pain points that we're trying to address, the accessibility of science and the ability of people to consume science. So a clear example is language. So when you think about like the language of science, historically, or like in the last, not even historically, like not 500 years ago, but in the last, say, 50 years, it's been English, right? But in year 2018, there is a switch happened. Chinese literature has surpassed number of publications coming out of China has surpassed the U.S. And increasingly, the language of science is no longer just English. So even if you're an English speaker, it's no longer enough to just like consume English scientific literature. You have to figure out a way to consume the Chinese literature as well. And there's an organization that was created in the last few years, and I credit them because they're translating a lot of meaningful Chinese literature. An important function of that organization is to translate the most important, most critical Chinese literature to English. so that you English speaking scientists can actually leverage, and decision makers can leverage those findings. So when you think about, say, Egypt, because that's where I grew up, the Arabic language is the mainstream, and people learn English in order to be able to do business and learn science, but you're never gonna be as good as the person who learned English growing up, and at the same time, even if you do, it's like an uphill battle. So you're basically working with one hand tied behind your back. So it's one of the things that I think about, like how can we bridge this language barrier. And my early work in Microsoft Research was on machine translation, so it's a problem that actually we have pretty good solutions for. So one of the projects that I'm working on with collaborators from Carnegie Mellon University and from Alexandria University is translating Chinese literature at scale. So we don't want to just be taking those few publications. We want to translate all Chinese literature, and then also translate all this English literature to all the other languages. So
That's a lot.
it's a lot, and the methods are there. It's about picking the right things for the right people and having the right quality metrics. It's just putting in the work and solving the right problem. So to me, this is a problem that's worth solving because it will eventually create this bridge this inequality gap.
So this is a question of some of my ignorance, but so is the language, like you said, so the language of Egypt is Arabic, right? Is like, does each country have their own language, or does everyone speak Arabic? Like, does Egyptians, so I would have thought Egypt speak Egyptian, Iranians speak Iranian. Is like, is that basically Arabic is the language that's spoken over there?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. And it is true that Arabic is a language, so pretty much everybody who speaks Arabic can read the newspaper, and the newspaper is written in what we call modern standard Arabic. So it's what you think of like as the standard way of writing the language. But in day-to-day conversations, we have more a dialectal way of speaking, and it's so different. It sounds so different than the standard
Yeah,
Arabic.
yeah. Like in the states, Southerners can't understand the Yankees. Yankees can't understand the Southerners. Everyone like has their own dialect, and like no one can understand what they say in Louisiana or the Cajun Creole people down there. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and so definitely the U.S. has some of that, but also think about the government, how the government communication affects this, right? It's like, and like basically, we humans function within a society that's structured for the most part, and so the structures for example, Egypt, Algeria, Tunis, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all of these countries and societies over time, it's like they become somewhat isolated, not fully isolated, but somewhat isolated. So a lot of the changes that happen in the dialects of Arabic, you're not going to see in the US. And one of the projects I worked on at Google was creating the first question answering data set scalable with different dialects, not just Arabic, also Spanish. I don't remember what other languages we had. But the idea of translating dialects and creating like channels of communication is quite important, because when you think about it, the war is which to me is like the enemy is the war.
Yeah.
The war is like a result of lack of understanding, lack of negotiation and communication. If we're able to improve the way we communicate across countries, across societies, maybe some wars can be avoided. Maybe one of the reasons wars happen is because there's an overestimation of how likely it is to win in a fight, and that's maybe with better communication, with better transfer of information, like actually let's not fight because that's not going to work.
Yeah, one thing that's crazy recently, like the Iran Israel, like Israel attacks Iran, and then Iran attacks back, but at the same level, right? Like it's like they're trading job, like trading like shots, but equally, like no one wants to take it up for fear of doing a all-out war. Like, okay, just don't attack back, right? Like, of course, I don't think anyone's gonna do that. Like, Israel did this, so Iran has to retaliate, but they're very careful to tell everyone we're attacking these spots, very precise. It's like no one's like up in the ante, so to speak, right? But how long can you keep on going back and forth? Like strike here, strike here. It's like I don't know, just it's insane to me, right? But no, but I'm smart to know. Don't like Iran's not gonna say, okay, we're gonna be the bigger country and not attack back, right? Not doing that. I don't think Israel's gonna do it either, right? So I don't know. It's just insanity to me.
The situation in the Middle East is on fire. It's deeply saddening to me because I know people who died. I know people
They
who
scoop a
lost
little bit.
family. Sorry.
Scoot up just a little bit.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah. It's it's a very hard question to me because um, the way this war has affected people in the Middle East is just it's insane. It's beyond explanation. Like I can't. The reason I can't just like say it because I would be just one of many, many, many people who have been saying it with no effect. Feels like there's no effect. So of course, every government has its shortcomings. Every country, every government has its mistakes. Um, I will say, being in the U.S., paying tax dollars to the U.S. that go into the bombs that you know are thrown on villages in Palestine is deeply troubling to me. And I don't speak for myself. I speak for a large number of people who, including, you know, people who are European descendants and, white people in the US who don't agree with this war, with what the US position on this war. And, of course, Iran is there. Is like, it's part of the ecosystem that's happening there. But I think trying to be objective here, I don't think the current like inflammation in the Middle East is driven by Iran. I don't think that's the case.
okay, okay. Um, so Egypt, um, I think most people in America think of Egypt, they think of like the pharaohs, the pyramids, the King Tut exhibit. Can you talk about what's it like to be in Egypt right now? Like what's something like Egypt like most Americans wouldn't realize?
Great question. As with every country, there are things that are beautiful and there are things that are not so great. Um, some of the things I love about Egypt is no matter how dire, things get, people are hospitable. People, if you're visiting, you're gonna be greeted with, a lot of hospitality. And, of course, especially if you're in a touristic place, people are gonna try to make money from you. And, haggling happens a lot, because, they're overpricing stuff. But other than that, it's the hospitality that you get in Egypt, and the depth of history is incredible. But that's something that you already expect. The history that you can observe and like learn about in Egypt is kind of like why a lot of people visit in the first place. But I think how warm people tend to be is something that my friends who visit kind of like get surprised by.
And so I never seen the pyramids. Have you actually seen the pyramids?
Yeah, I've been in it
So
multiple times.
so are they like are the blocks of stones as big as people say? Are they really that big, like that humongous?
Pretty big, yeah.
So how do you think they built the pyramid? Like just theory on like, like because it's like people nowadays can't figure it out. Like how do you think they did it? Like, of course the crazy stories, aliens came and helped them out, or they had like, they had like 1,000 slaves picking up each stone, right? Like it has to be some kind of engineering feat they did, right? It's lost of time, right? What's your theory on that? Like how they I mean, I might be mixed up. Like they dragged the stones like hundreds of miles away. Like how did they do this? Right? It's mind boggling to me.
So there's a lot of theories, obviously, and Egyptologists have been studying this question for a very long time. So I'm not actually like a scholar in this field.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't want to be
Yeah,
speaking.
strictly theory,
But
strictly, yeah.
yeah, well, from my
But
observations and like from visiting the museums, there's basically um, simple machines that
mhm,
were used to lift big rocks, but using simple machines and leveraging the powers of things like the Nile River, because it
mhm.
was actually closer back then to the pyramids. And
Yeah, we no idea where the Nile River was back then, do we?
it's changed its course
Yeah.
over many many years. But yeah, that's like part of the answer. And if you want to really dig into this, there's a lot of like
I'm sure
resources
I'm sure
on.
there's like all like crazy stuff out there too, right? Like I said, aliens, this
Oh
came,
God, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoy
It's all fun
reading.
of reading stuff, we know it's not possible probably.
I love the the imagination, but
Mhm.
that comes with some of these stories because it's like, pushing the boundaries of your imagination. Even if you don't believe it, it kind of like helps you be more imaginative,
Yeah.
be more creative.
And then like people don't realize, or hopefully they realize that there's pyramids in Mexico and Peru. There's pyramids everywhere, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So a lot of knowledge transfer happened
Mhm.
back then, presumably that enabled different civilizations to build things in a similar ways. And oftentimes my Indian friends and I, and my Chinese friends and I, like connect on, and Mexican friends, of course, connect on things like this, because these are very ancient civilizations.
And
And
it's definitely interesting to talk about too, right? like, and then I don't, I might be making this up. I think every time we're like all the pyramids are on the same latitude, attitude, or something like some. They're kind of there's something that are the same, right?
you mean in Egypt?
Egypt and Peru, like all the pyramids, some kind of connect some kind of way.
That I'm not sure about across cultures. I know that within, for example, the Giza pyramids, there is very clear alignment, including like strong, clear understanding of the way the planets
Yeah.
orbit the sun, and you know it, it gives us a lot of appreciation for the lost sciences, because I think a lot of modern day culture centers are like Renaissance being like the epicenter of
Yeah.
history or
Yeah.
something. But
The Dark Ages, no one learned anything. They're all like stupid brutes.
right, so it's like it's happened through science communication. Like a lot of the foundations of science and technology that was adopted in Europe were based on the communication of sciences from other parts of the world, including the Middle East.
So, do you think we're actually getting smarter? Like, if you compare us to someone from 1500, are we actually smarter? Or is our human intelligence is based the same and just our tech is better?
It's a great question. So the way to define intelligence is very, very difficult. There's this wonderful book by Jeff Hawkins called A Thousand Brains. A Thousand Brain is the theory of how the brain works. And just like to try to very briefly summarize it, we have the new cortex, which is like the new brain, if you will. It represents about 70% of the cells in our brain. It's kind of like it's responsible for the perception, all the like the interesting things that are happening. Not all, but breathing, for example, is like an old brain kind of function. But the new brain is like seeing objects, trying to recognize what they are, understanding language, making decisions, planning. All of these functions happen in the new cortex. And what what this theory is saying is that uh, the neurons and they call them stacks of neurons, basically columns that work together as a collective object that takes some sensory information or some input from could be your skin, could be your eyes, could be your hearing, and does some processing to it. It's the same. Apparently, it's the same kind of process, same kind of function, um, same kind of processing, but gives rise to different functions depending on how you wire it. So, say you wire the same column or set of columns to your eyes because you can see. Over time, as a child, you learn, your brain adapts to actually interpret what you're seeing. And for somebody who has like a visual impairment in their eye that does not enable them to see, so the cornea is not functioning, right? So it's not sending the signal to the brain, to that column. That column is repurposed to solve something else. So it takes some kind of input, maybe from their hearing, maybe from their like touch, which is why like if somebody is unable to see, they tend to have kind of superpowers in other aspects in their sensory input. And that's the reason I'm mentioning all of this is when you think about intelligence, intelligence is the ability to function in a way that suits that actually solves the problem, right? That you're dealing with. The problems that we are dealing with today are in part the a production of the technology we have today. So, for example, if we didn't have cars, we wouldn't have problems with accidents, and then we wouldn't have to try to avoid, like the like dying while crossing the street. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's really difficult to answer this question. I don't know how to answer
Okay.
it.
All right. So is there a certain age demographic where it's easy to learn? Like, is it easier for people like 10 to 14 to learn, or 25 to 29, or like 75 to 89? The age demographic has been proven like this age is the best time to learn.
So elasticity of the brain is has been proven to be something that happens over the course of your life. Um, I think there are some cultural biases that kind of like tend to push us to kind of like settle on what we've learned. But some people have a strong desire to learn, so the are lifelong learners. So for those individuals, the studies I've read show that there are spurs of growth, basically in our brain's ability to like absorb new information and like learn from them. I can't remember the exact years, but definitely in the teenage years and
Okay.
the early childhood years. Um, so those are some of the important, like you call them growth spurs.
Yeah. And that's like some people learn best by actually doing it. Some people learn best by like watching other people do it. Why do you think people have different ways of learning that's better for them?
I mean, why is a great question. I don't know. The real answer is we can think about it. I imagine that people get better at the things they practice a lot,
Yeah.
right? So
Probably get positive reinforcement for something. They keep on doing it.
yeah, so some of the things that I've never been exposed to, I just don't know how to do. And then when you start seeing somebody close to you doing it, you get a chance to like analyze how they're doing it. Maybe get some mentorship from them. You learn how to do it better, and then you become better at whatever it is. This operation that enables you to learn more effectively. So I'm not sure, to be honest, but I think when it comes to learning. Uh, Both in terms of like machine learning and human learning, we really benefit from trying to like observe a number of methods and find the methods that work more effectively for the kind of thing that we're trying to learn. Because when we're deliberate about it, you know, we have a higher chance of success.
How much should we depend on AI to make decisions for us? Like, a lot of times, like people, I'll make this up. People put a question in chat GPT and and they just go with that, right? They don't like no research, make sure it's right. Like how much should we depend on AI?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? We have at Holistic Intelligence for Global Good, one of the driving forces for us is credibility of information. So um, we take this very seriously. The question of should we rely on it? I mean, to a degree, yes, because it's more effective to rely on it. But I think it's about seeing the references, seeing the evidence, and instead of just judging blindly. There are like a lot of ways to answer this question because the stack, like the technology stack that's needed in order to derive value from something like ChatGPT is just huge. So there's a lot of responsibility that falls on the part of the organization that's releasing these models to do their due diligence, do the testing that's necessary, and like put the control knobs basically that enables the user to get what they need and know when what they're getting is not credible. So that's one of the, I would say, one of the strengths of our platform is that we do this in a way that's a lot more credible than existing platforms. And on the part of the user, like your responsibility is to actually be smart about it, like awareness. If you're learning how to use a gun and you're not learning how to use it properly, you're gonna cause a lot of damage that is not helpful. But if you're learning it because you're a policeman and you're gonna be like enforcing the law and intervening in certain situations, so you get the right training, you know how to use it, you know the safety measure around it, like you can use it more safely. So I think that part of the responsibility falls on the organization that's releasing the models. Part falls on us as consumers.
So let's suppose there's a student out there and they have to do a research paper, right? So they one, like do the old fashioned way, do their own research, or say they two, use ChatGPT and then and then like kind of massage that article too, right? Like how much should students be allowed to use like AI and stuff for their own education purpose?
So you mentioned allowed to use, right? And that's an interesting way to phrase it. So that's I'll say let me propose two different
Okay.
ways to phrase this question. One is should the organization, so say university, allow students to do this or professors to allow students to do this? The other one is should the students do it, assuming there's no like oversight.
Mhm.
And the answer in both, I think, should be yes. We should allow our students to leverage the latest technologies. Like imagine when the calculator
I was gonna
came
bring that
out,
up. Yeah, back in the days
teachers,
when I grew up, the teachers like, you not have a calculator in your pocket every other day. I'm like, well, actually, I do have one in my pocket every day. You know,
yeah, and you know,
I think my answer is definitely yes, like you, right?
yeah. So you and I had this experience growing up, and now it's so obvious to us that was the wrong answer, teacher.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and it's the same. Like as an educator myself at UW, I definitely encourage people to use these tools in order to be more effective. And but
Yeah.
it's really about like learning how to use them effectively, and it's not easy.
Like I don't think we're both not saying, hey, put in ChatGPT, do a research paper for the eighth grade on, the Roman Empire. We're not saying do that and copy and paste, put in your paper, right? We're saying maybe put a question in there and then go read through it, have your mind stimulated, do some more research, change the words up. Yeah, I think it's a good base template to use. I think.
Even better is to use chat.ai,
Mhm. Okay.
which is the product that we are building. So basically, what we're doing is we take this input and we find all the literature that is relevant to it, and then we have our state-of-the-art models that actually understand this scientific literature, all these papers. We re-rank them to make sure they are as close as possible to your input, and over time we get the implicit feedback from our users to improve this ranking, and then over time we are able to actually close the gap. We show the gap between what's happened in the literature and what the problem that we're trying to solve is. So instead of just doing a query search, we're focusing on the problem. So we're inviting the user to articulate what the problems they're trying to solve. As I mentioned before, scientists tend to like focus like over index onto the scientific method that's being used or the solution itself instead of the problem. So part of the solution that we're offering is to like direct their attention to the problem itself and complement, have the methods that are developed in the literature be in service to this problem, and then find the gap. And it's a collaborative process by which we create kind of like a proposal for how to address this problem along with the references. One of the cool things that we have is references, recommendations. So when you publish your paper, eventually after doing the work, you send it to do peer reviewing, right? The peer reviewing takes a long time, and you tend to work for like 6 months or a year or more before you're able to send the paper out. But on our platform, you can basically in 15 minutes come up with a hypothesis, a scientific hypothesis, and share it with a few of your colleagues or even experts in the field whose names are actually listed here as some of the references in our platform. And then you're able to get from them pretty early feedback. So as you know, if you're trying to predict something that's going to happen in the future, the sooner you know, the better. So if those people are going to judge, like evaluate your method as not original or infeasible or whatever, 1 year from now, you might as well get that input today and try to incorporate their concern or maybe change the way you're describing the problem so that they understand it better. So all of this are some of the benefits that we our users are benefiting from.
Also say too, if you have a school paper and you use ChatGPT, don't put ChatGPT as a reference, right? you know.
Well, it's an interesting question because do you think it's important to articulate in your writing whether or not you use AI or some AI driven tool?
I don't know. That's a good question, right? I'm guessing a lot of school like professors, teachers might want to know if it's AI or not, but I don't know. That's a good question, right? But I'm saying this don't say AI as a reference, right? Like, like maybe you should put AI, maybe you should just put ChatGPT and then the other references there. That's a good point. I never thought about it like that.
So it's not enough to be on to, in my opinion, it's not enough to just mention the tool. You want to give like a trace
Mhm.
that allows people to go and check the time it happened, who generated this process, what was the input that you produced, what edits did you make. So all of this tracking of the progress, that like the collaboration, because it is a collaboration between the human and the machine. We want this to be available to the professor, for example, when they're evaluating the work, right? So using our platform, professors are actually going to be able to evaluate not just the final product, but how much did the student contribute to this?
Mhm.
Was it just clicking a button, or did they articulate the problem in a way that is very concise that other
Oh,
tools
maybe
couldn't?
that's a good one. Maybe when you do a paper, you need to include on there the question you asked.
Absolutely.
The more detailed the question, like you might say, hey, OpenAI, what's the best bourbon, right? But you say, what's the best bourbon based on this, and my taste is this, all these details. Definitely a better answer, I would think.
And in addition to this, so our user is able to edit, like create things. So remove these references. We don't actually think they're the best. We're going to add these references. We're also going to edit this proposal so that we focus more on this aspect of the solution because that's where the focus is. All of these changes and modifications are easy to track, and we're tracking them. So for the benefit of the organization that's trying to monitor the work, for the benefit of the collaborators who are trying to kind of like reproduce the work, how did we actually come to this idea? And then eventually our models are going to be able to produce better ideas by observing how people are editing the hypotheses that are generated from the platform.
So I think one thing a lot of founders have a problem with is like figuring out the pricing model. Like, how do you figure out, how do you personally figure out the pricing you should charge? Or is that still like an ongoing process for you?
It's every market is different. So I will say we have a price, and it's our pricing currently is, we basically targeted a low number so that we start with like lots of adoption, and with the idea that in the future we may increase it.
Yeah.
But one of the conversations I had with a VC is like, you can't increase prices; people are going to be unhappy, and you can grandfather. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of approaches. One of the most intriguing methods I've seen, Together AI is one of the fastest growing AI startups today. I noticed that they have a very cool pricing model. So they have a certain LLM, I believe it's Llama, that's free to use. And then if you want to use any other model, you're gonna have to pay a certain amount for the beginner package. The beginner package is like cheap, like you pay $5 for the model that you're trying to use. But once you want to progress to the next level, so basically this allows you to build, right? Like it doesn't allow you to scale what you're building and use it every day or whatever, but it's going to allow you to incorporate that product into your system and kind of like start relying on it. And this is, as somebody who's building a product or platform, you want people to rely on your platform, and then once they love using it, then you start asking them for the
Yeah.
the
Referrals and money and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, all the benefits that will
Yeah.
allow your business to sustain. So for that organization, Together AI, I think they're doing it in a pretty good way. The caveat here is, do you declare the price ahead of time, or do you ask like the next level to contact sales? And I find that intriguing because it's such a small decision, but it has big implications.
Yeah,
Right?
this is my point of view, right? Like when I'm on a website trying to find something, if there's no pricing, I don't click, right. To my mind, like, what if I think the product's like $100, but you want to charge me $1,000, right? I can't afford $1,000. I'm wasting my time, wasting your time, right? They put some kind of pricing model there, right? So okay, like example, like there's like email newsletters. Some email newsletters like $10 a month, others are like $1,000 a month, right? Each have different characters, right? But yeah, I'm a big fan of having price on there, right? Just like it to me, it's just a pet peeve. Maybe there's no price on there, right? Just me personally, right? Like I have no idea if I can afford you. I don't want to waste my time. I don't waste your time, right? Like obviously I'm interested. I'm on your website. I want to buy this, but man, like if you're gonna sell, it's like tell me you want to sell me this bottle of water for $5. Maybe I do, maybe don't. But you say, hey, it's $500 because like crystallized water and special water. I can afford that, right?
Yeah.
This is my opinion.
So that's the perspective of the user, right? And as a user, there are different kinds of users, like an individual who's like doing things for their family or whatever, right? And there's, a small company purchase, like for somebody like a startup founder, could be like, the account manager of, a big organization like Microsoft, could be somebody who is a nonprofit organization, could be somebody who's doing the same function, but in a different country where, the dynamics are very different. So this is where I find the contact sales method to be potentially better.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, some people say contact sales because then the sales or account manager could say it's $1,000, but for you, I give you a special deal of $100, right? And there's that part too, right?
Right. And so like this is actually something that we do like rely on. Like, yeah, we do significant discounts in certain economies where we don't we want traction in those economies because we have a strategic long-term plan to penetrate those markets, even if they're not going to make us a lot of revenue on the short term. And at the same time, we make the bulk of our revenue in a different market. So
And so you said earlier, like you have like people all over the world, like Egypt, Philippines, like, so how do you run your company? Like, is that you run it based on Seattle time? Like, how do you like, I mean, you make people have meetings all at the same time. Like, how do you run the company, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. We try to not have like lots of meetings, obviously, but so our meetings are kind of like blocked in a short amount of time, which is roughly between 9 and 12, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Uh, Seattle time. And basically, some team members find it better to just work US hours, or even when nobody in the US is working, because like say like the people in the North America are taking time off or whatever, they still prefer this because it's been like for many years they've already been doing that.
Mhm.
They switch to the US, you know, lifestyle, I guess, or like timeline, time zone. It's interesting because I tried to do that a few years ago. I wanted to change my waking hours for whatever reason during the pandemic, and I just couldn't. My body didn't take it. My collaborator Baster, I credit her for being able to do this diligently every day, no problem. And then for others, they just work when they want to work, especially technical team. Most of the work is, one on one, like it doesn't require lots of meetings outside the technical team. So we have a concentration of people like in Saudi Arabia and Egypt who are actually doing the engineering work. And so they have meetings wherever, like in their time zone. And so I think part of the answer is to give a certain function to a region, but maybe a different function goes to a different region because, for example, our designers are in Ukraine, and Ukraine is actually pretty close to Egypt. But I have to figure out how to meet with them in a time that works for both of us. Definitely not easy. I will say I don't sleep enough.
So let's suppose someone's out there, they're in junior high or high school, they're making good grades, like they're good on math, biology, science, and they want to become a scientist. What advice would you give that person?
Nice. Um, they want to be a scientist. That's the goal. Scientist is such a broad word. I think he will want to figure out what's the driver, like what is driving their intrigue in science, like because the way you do science varies actually quite a bit. If you're a computer scientist, it's very different than if you're a neurologist. It's just I think all of them are interesting. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that one of them is better, but I think if for us to do our best work, we need to be like to have this intrinsic driver. And it's for a lot of people like they run out of it pretty quick. So I try to kind of like instill, especially early stage people like professionals, to try to focus on that. The thing that's gonna keep their drive going, um, and it's not gonna fade quickly once they get used to the paycheck.
Yes. Yeah. Is there anything else that I asked you that I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about?
You've been a great moderator
Yeah,
and
thank you.
host. Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to, share a bit about our platform and, science communication, because I do believe it's important to make the world a better place.
Um, and can you give us your social media or ways to reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is Wammar at Higg.world. So Wammar at Higg.world.
If you're a platform, are you like currently looking for beta testers or anything like that? Or
Well, I mean, our platform is easy to use for people without paying anything to begin with until you run out of free credits, and then you start, you know, being invited to, sign up, subscribe.
yes. Hey, Bridges, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.